Cyclops is shocked that the Pharaoh is still alive as the villain tells him that he wants him to serve him as he conquers the world. Refusing, the Pharaoh is angered and shoots flames from his ankh at the hero who dodges. Moving quickly, Cyclops ricochets a shot at the Pharaoh that connects, but holds back as he still needs to find his brother as he moves in for a tackle. Back with Jean and the others, they continue looking for Scott when she tries to contact him mentally and finds his location. Realizing he's far away, they hurry to his aid. Back with Cyclops, he felt her contact and knows they're coming, but the sudden contact caused him to be distracted. Recovering quickly though, Cyclops demands to know the whereabouts of his brother. He quickly realizes though that the Pharaoh is stronger than he thought as the villain manages to stun the hero and then moves fast to knock the teen unconscious. Jean loses contact with Scott and becomes worried when she picks up another mental pattern like Scott's but evil. Back with the unconscious hero, the Pharaoh takes him and his brother and begins transporting them, taking them to the airport. At customs, the guards inquire about but doesn't find anything suspicious with the mummy coffin going through and loads it onto a plane to Egypt. On the plane, Pharaoh opens a box, dumping Cyclops out, who has a skin-tight mask adhered to his head that is impossible to remove and blocks his powers. Resigning, but staying ready to break free when he can, he tries to find out where they're going, but is unable to when he hears Alex locked inside the sarcophagus. At that moment, Jean manages to get a lock on Scott, seeing that he's on a plane, and the team hurry to stay caught up. They see the plane slow down as the Pharaoh looks out and shoots a ray at the X-Men, causing the ship's steering to break. Acting quickly, Iceman creates ice blocks to catch the wind resistance, and Angel grabs the ship and slows the descent. Successfully saving themselves, they watch helplessly as the plane continues onward. Reaching Egypt, Pharaoh promises to kill Cyclops and his brother, but the hero isn't afraid of him. Activating a symbol on the wall, water begins flooding the chamber, and Pharaoh leaves to prepare something while Scott begins trying to figure a way out. Looking for Alex's sarcophagus, he finds it and begins smashing it apart, releasing his brother who removes the mask. They head outside where they find guards who rush to alert the Pharaoh when one reaches him with the news. Angered, he commands them to be killed immediately. The brothers are using the guards' numbers to combat them and hold their own. The Pharaoh moves to join the battle as well when he is stopped and lifted bodily into the air. Looking above, he sees that Angel has grabbed his cloak and begins hurling him around before smashing him into the pyramid. Iceman begins freezing the guards, and Jean and Beast hurry to aid Cyclops, who is glad to see them arrive, as he was almost at his end and worried for Alex. Up above, the Pharaoh prepares an attack with his ankh when it shatters due to waves of force, and down below, Alex has his arms raised with energy coming from them. Blasted from the top of the pyramid, Angel is forced to save the Pharaoh, who commands his minions to run, which they gladly do while the team worry about Alex. Wondering why everyone is looking at him, Scott explains that his brother's powers must have activated, revealing him to be a mutant as well. We see the X-Men as they come across an archaeological dig while they have the Pharaoh as a prisoner who they hope to turn over to the authorities. Landing, the team scout the area with prisoner in tow while Alex is fearful of his powers hurting someone, and Scott reassures him that they'll figure something out. The Pharaoh begins shouting that they don't know anything and that he knows they're brothers when Angel returns saying there's no one around while the villain's guards watch them from above. Jean suddenly yells for them to get down, allowing them to narrowly avoid a laser beam, but are stunned. The guards rush out to fight the downed heroes when Cyclops manages to raise his head and let off a shot when a ship clips the back of his head. Beast also recovers and disposes of the shipwrighter when the Pharaoh yells for them to just grab Alex and leave the rest. Beast wonder what makes Alex so important when he is suddenly shot by one of the guards. The villain urges his men to hurry before the X-Men awaken, but Iceman comes to and moves to stop the ship they're on. Before his ice block can strike though, the Pharaoh destroys it easily and they watch as he leaves, with Angel blaming himself for the team's loss. Moving quick, Angel flies and follows the ship when it spots him. The ship fires concussion missiles which stun Warren again, and he falls out of the sky. Back with the team, Cyclops is worried about Jean and vows to get the enemy. She wakes up and they see she's alright, and Iceman tells where he saw Angel go when Cyclops asks Jean to locate Warren. Focusing hard, she manages to locate and contact the Winged Wonder. Angel feels her connection as he continues following the villain, having managed to save himself from the fall. He comes across another temple which is identical to the one they were previously at and follows the ship inside, while breaking contact with Jean so he can have full concentration. Inside, Alex is hooked up to a machine while the Pharaoh rambles on and mentions he'll learn of power right before he dies. He then mentions that the two of them are linked by destiny, that cosmic rays are the source of both of their powers, and that his began to fade as Alex's awoke. Slamming a door over Alex, the cosmic rays that went into him are shut off. The Pharaoh begins absorbing the extra rays and starts growing more powerful and transforming. Angel, seeing enough, rushes outside when he spots the X-Men and yells for them to get back from the temple. At that moment, the transformed Pharaoh bursts through the temple and grabs Angel, who he begins squeezing while adopting a new name, the Living Monolith. Cyclops shoots the monolith, though it merely surprises him, not hurting him. Shooting a blast at Cyclops, he moves to crush him when he is stopped by an invisible barrier created by Jean, though she can barely hold it. Beast moves in quick and kicks the monolith's feet out from under him. However, it only puts him in easy reach of Jean. Back with Alex, he begins worrying about his dwindling air supply while wondering if the power that he used earlier might have become stored within him and whether he could use it again. He begins to feel the energy build up inside him. While outside, the monolith has grabbed Jean when she notices that his voice and grip are getting weaker. The monolith begins shrinking while the temple starts to shake. The temple falls and crushes the Pharaoh, while Scott screams for his brother, and the others try to reassure him and remain optimistic. Beast then sees a figure in the smoke and recognizes Alex, who stumbles forward, yelling at them to stay back and that he can't control his powers at all. We see Lorna as she's dressed in her costume testing out her powers when she begins hearing loud footsteps approaching from two sides and hears a voice identifying her as a mutant. Two sentinels grab for Lorna as she screams for help. On the other side of the world though, the X-Men are in disbelief at the power of Scott's brother Alex. The team wonder why he's staying back though, while they have the Pharaoh as a prisoner when he begins spouting his fears of his power, of how they began manifesting while he was under duress, and is afraid of what it would do to a living person if he ever lost control. He yells for them to leave when Iceman returns with the police, who knows of the archaeologist. The Pharaoh, using his clout with the locals, accuses Alex of being the menace he was sent for, and accuses him of destroying the temple while he stands amidst its ruins, while Scott insists that it's the Pharaoh instead. The police don't like the accusation against the archaeologist and decide to arrest the teens while Alex screams for them to stay away and inadvertently unleashes his power against one of the armed men. Angel moves quick to block and stun the men when Cyclops sees more coming. Beast leaps in and knocks the gun out of a guard's hand while Alex runs during the fray. Iceman notices that he's gone, and Cyclops, in a fit of rage at the police's handling of the situation, unleashes a powerful burst of energy. The team board their ship, leaving the Pharaoh behind, with Scott eager to find his brother. Angel, though, is doubtful they'll find him, which proves to be true as the hours pass, and Alex watches as they go past him without realizing it. Inside a cave, he believes he realizes what a mutant really is and is anguished over his potential threat to anyone. He then hears a voice tell him he won't ever have to worry again and looks up to see a sentinel approaching him. Back with the team as it gets dark, Cyclops gets the idea to use Cerebro, but when they call Lorna to use the mutant tracker, they see her place is destroyed. Bobby, upon seeing all the damage, begins worrying about her and demands to find out what happened to her quickly. Scott, being understanding, gives Bobby the ship to head home with Beast, while he and the others stay to continue looking for Alex. While Bobby is thanking them, an unknown man monitoring them sees that they have split up and vows that nothing will save them. Hours later, they reach her place and begin investigating when the police arrive ready to arrest them. Bobby moves quick and freezes their weapons, while Beast urges they leave quickly. One of the officers, though, throws a chair towards Hank while he's by the window. Beast is knocked out of the window and falls from the high building when he sees ice freezing in the corner of his vision. Seeing an ice pole, he quickly grabs it, saving himself, and they move fast to get to a safe place that Scott has while sticking to the alleys to avoid the police. At Scott's apartment, a depressed Bobby wonders where Lorna is and why the police were after them when Hank sees a news report on TV. A federal judge named Chalmers had found that mutants were a threat to humanity and joined an anti-mutant movement. The report continues, and Larry Trask is introduced when he begins describing the dangers of mutants and how they killed his father, Bolivar Trask, much to the shock of Hank and Bobby. He talks of how he was there when the first Sentinel was created and how he went off to college. He later finds his father's body and believes that the X-Men had killed him and the Sentinel program. He's spent his years collecting evidence of their crime and knows about their assault on the police of the Nile and proclaims the return of the Sentinels. As the news report finishes, a Sentinel breaks through the wall and constricts Beast with a steel cable. Beast manages to snap the steel cable while Bobby begins freezing the Sentinel. However, as they continue fighting, they make no headway against the Sentinels as on the television, Trask is talking of how he's updated them so that they would be able to adapt instantly to any mutant power and can easily overpower their enemies. As he says this, the Sentinel disposes of Iceman. Beast kicks the Sentinel from behind, saving Iceman, but doing so causes him to get ensnared again and captured. On the TV, Trask reassures the judge that the Sentinels never went out of control, and that if they did, he'd be able to control them remotely. Iceman tries to make the clones of himself again, but the Sentinel sees right through the trick and begins destroying the fakes. Bobby rushes and grabs a bag out of the closet and tosses it to Beast for when he's freed. Using his powers, the metal tendril is frozen and becomes brittle enough for Beast to break himself free. Iceman tells him to get out and that he'll stay and hold the Sentinel back, otherwise they both get caught and don't find Lorna. Bobby yells for Beast to get out while he builds an ice wall to hold the Sentinel back. Ashamed to leave his companion behind, the oldest of the X-Men wonders why the youngest is sacrificing himself and wishes that Professor X was still alive and hopes that Iceman can survive the fight. When he changes out of his costume, he notices that the fighting has stopped. Looking up, Hank sees the Sentinel flying away with Bobby and becomes depressed, and doesn't feel as though he did the right thing. Back with the other X-Men, the hunt for Alex is unsuccessful when they get the report from Hank about the robots. Angered, Warren wishes to go back to the States right away, but Scott tells him the Sentinels would make short work of him alone, as Hank signs off and leaves the others. Angel, envious of Beast being in the thick of action, decides to go to the States anyway despite the cries of his teammates and apologizes on his way out. Back home, the judge is having second thoughts about his stance on all mutants being evil when Trask tells him that the press can talk with the mutant he's captured after he's rendered harmless to prove his point. Gloating about his first prisoner of war, Trask instructs the Sentinel to release Bobby, who, in a fit of anger, moves to retaliate. However, he's quickly caught and finds he can't ice up, as the steam he was engulfed in sapped his powers for 4 hours. He then reveals that he recorded Bobby's attack and vows vengeance on the X-Men for his father's death. He is then thrown into a cell where a man in a black suit starts talking of how Trask told him that he'd leave them alone when Bobby recognizes him as Alex. Going by Trask's nickname of Havoc, Alex asks about Lorna on the table, which gets Bobby's attention. Checking on her, he sees that she's passed out. Asked about his costume, Alex tells Bobby that he made a deal with Trask for it and that it helps him control his powers when Bobby calls him a coward, but Lorna sticks up for him. Lorna defends him when Alex tells him that he's not a fighter and that Trask promised to leave Lorna alone as a sentinel enters the room. It grabs Lorna and, angered at the broken promise, builds up his power. Havoc's power pounds into the sentinel, destroying it, which shocks Larry. Pulling out a machine, he shoots a beam at Havoc's head, reversing his ability to absorb cosmic rays, while the other two mutants are powerless to stop him. Lorna urges Alex to stop fighting, but he's worried about the living monolith coming back since he can't absorb the rays, and Trask merely laughs at them. At that moment, Professor Abdul is condemning the mutant attack on him when he feels energy coursing into him, causing him to transform into the living monolith. However, the Sentinels are there to stop him and coat him in an adhesive that blocks the source of his energy, causing him to revert to normal. Back with Angel, he's almost back to the States when two Sentinels begin approaching him. Trying to outmaneuver them, he's too tired and moves to lose them in the clouds when they catch him in a metallic net, trapping him. Above him, Jean and Scott witness the incident on a plane when the Sentinels detect them, but choose to return to base as they were told to collect only one mutant and leave. Elsewhere, another one bursts through a wall to capture Mesmero and Magneto, who tells his underling to hold him off, but Mesmero's power has no effect on the machine. Running for Magneto's aid, Mesmero sees the master of magnetism get shot and fall apart, discovering that he is merely a robot. Distraught, the Sentinel easily overcomes Mesmero, while Trask is informed of another mutant in the immediate area when he sees that the Judge is approaching him. The Judge arrives and is surprised that the base is inside a mountain, and Trask tells him it was the Sentinel's doing. The Judge then repeats his opinion earlier of being against the mutants, and Larry reassures him, knowing he has the footage of Bobby's attack. The Judge then sees the mutants suspended in pods and disapproves when Trask yells that if the Judge backs out, the Sentinels will still carry on. The Judge wants to hear the X-Men side as well when they see the remaining X-Men scaling the mountain to get into the base. Activating a probe, they hear the X-Men's conversation of how they need to find their friends. Trask, hearing this, swears on the medallion that his father gave him the day he died, and remembers being told never to remove it. Just then, he hears a loud, painful wailing as Banshee appears and destroys one of the machines, but two others release a noise that counteracts and hurts the flying mutant. Seeing that Sean merely pretended to get captured to gain access to the base, he sends a message to the Sentinels to capture and kill all the mutants, but the Judge moves to stop him. Punching the young man, he goes flying with the Judge holding the medallion. Checking on Larry, he sees the error he made when the Sentinels moved to carry out his order, and he tells them to stop, but they refuse to listen to him. The leading Sentinel grabs Trask, informing him that the mutant signal they detected earlier was from Trask himself and that they'll carry out his last order as a human. We join the X-Men as the mini Cerebro tells them that they're right on top of the other mutants. Jean is glad to have found the others, but Beast, being suspicious, fears it may be a trap. No sooner than he speaks the words, an explosion sends them all flying, and Jean is only able to grab one of them telekinetically. Scott tells her to slow only their descent, but she's so worried about Hank that she misses what he says and only hears him yelling. She hears him repeat to make a field under Beast, which allows him to bounce forward, saving him. Back inside the base, Trask is feeling remorse for the supposed demise of the X-Men and asks why he's being called a mutant and reminds the machine that his father created them. Trask protests when the Sentinel tells him to ask Judge Chalmers, who admits and explains that Larry predicted his mother's death and Bolivar Trask created the medallion to negate his mutant abilities. Larry realizes then why the machine didn't obey him, as they only followed the last command that a human gave them. Trask tries to tell Chalmers how to stop them when he's knocked out. Moving to imprison Larry, the Sentinel tells the judge that he won't obey but will protect him, and while checking the screen, they see Quicksilver and his sister are about to be captured. Elsewhere, Blob, Unis, and Mastermind are similarly captured, while Chalmers blames himself due to taking Larry's medallion. Just then, a strong mutant signal is detected, and the robots determine that it's a group of mutants climbing the mountain before the signal is gone. Outside, Cyclops and the others find a fissure that leads into the base. Inside, they are immediately spotted, and the Sentinel attacks and calls in an alert. Beast moves quick and knocks it back, while Jean is instructed to use her telekinesis on the behemoth. She staggers it, but Beast is sent flying away. Luckily, he catches a pole and uses his agility to save himself. Cyclops moves quick and unleashes a gigantic blast of energy. Hurrying forward, they hear a hatch open and overhear an announcement that a cargo containing Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Toad are approaching. Upon hearing this, Cyclops develops a plan, and when the ship lands, they hurry forward while the Sentinel on board checks on its destroyed companion. The X-Men hurry forward to free the other mutants when the Sentinel returns to report the destroyed machine, only to discover that the prisoners have been swapped with the teens, and Beast, using the weighted boots from Toad's imprisonment, knocks the machine back. Cyclops steps forward, unleashing a blast, when he calls out the arrival of more Sentinels, and Beast hurriedly knocks over some fuel barrels. Jean then hurls them towards the attackers, who warn the rest of the base of the escaped mutants. Back with Trask, he feels his mutant powers manifest and sees the future when he realizes he's trapped like the other mutants and sees the judge looking at him. Chalmers doesn't want to mess with the controls for fear of destroying them when he sees Larry staring at an odd gun behind him and he picks it up. The gun, however, does nothing when he sees Larry staring at Havoc and believing that he wants Chalmers to kill Havoc, refuses. Back with the X-Men, they run past the Sentinel when above, Beast drops a piece of machinery on it when they see it repairing itself, and Hank tells them to hurry onward. Knowing they can only win by saving the others, they leave him and they reach the last two Sentinels guarding the prisoners. Adapting themselves to Scarlet Witch's power, Jean easily overpowers them with her telekinetic burst, knocking them over and allowing Cyclops to rush past them. Trusting Jean to hold the enemy back, he bursts into the room ready to fight. He then sees Chalmers shoot the odd gun at his brother, waking him from his prison. The Sentinel inside the room, though, is far from worried as the cell cuts off most of the cosmic radiation from Havoc. The Sentinel moves to kill Cyclops when Chalmers jumps in the way, taking the blast, and alarmed, the Sentinel readjusts its priorities. Seeing the distraction, Scott shoots Alex's cell, releasing him in time to warn of another robot approaching, and unleashes his power upon it. The Sentinels, however, ignore him to treat Chalmers as he tells Cyclops to use logic on the enemy, while Havoc feels his power building. Scott screams at the machines that they'll all die because of them when he realizes what the judge meant. He tells the leader that all humans are formed from mutation and that they must destroy the cause of it. Alex, unable to restrain the energy inside him, bursts his way outside with Scott following him while the Sentinels assemble to resolve the mutation issue. It tells Chalmers that he'll be fine and informs him that they mean to destroy the sun itself. The Sentinels then leave and fly into the heart of the sun itself, burning to ash upon entry. Back with the X-Men, they hurry after Havoc and find him buried under rubble, begging for help, when Hank decides to call a doctor. Soon after, we see a man hanging on a wall as a Dr. Lycos answers the phone and accepts Alex as a patient while the hanging man is drained of energy. We see Scott as he is leaving and learns that Judge Chalmers intends to release the other imprisoned mutants as he puts the medallion over Larry, which will remove his memories of being a mutant. The teens then leave when Warren asks why he got a doctor all the way in town for Alex when he's told that he's an acquaintance of Xavier and that they worked on something called Project Mutant. Hank knows nothing more of Lycos, other than he's the only one they can trust until Chalmers clears them of wrongdoing when he begins evading an oncoming police helicopter. As they finish losing the police, they decide to take Lorna home, but she refuses and wishes to join the X-Men as she wants to be on the team. The team reach Lycos as a patient is leaving, commenting on how the doctor's hypnosis helped him, and they insist on staying with him, but Lycos refuses to let them stay, saying he needs privacy to work on Alex, and Jean tells Scott to stop arguing with the doctor. Leaving Alex, Scott and Jean return home when Scott finds it suspicious of how quiet the place is. Finding that no one is answering him, he hears a noise behind a door, but Jean reminds him too late as he opens it that it leads to the danger room as he gets shot with a laser. Inside, Beast asks how Alex is and invites the two to join them upon hearing that he will be alright. Just then, Iceman messes up and Hank moves quick to save him. Jean watches with Lorna when she jokes of how Lorna is Bobby's girlfriend, but she quickly dismisses the claim. Lorna, feeling her powers becoming restored, decides to mess with the training X-Men and magnetically releases a slew of metal tendrils upon them. Cyclops hurries forward to help them when he joins Bobby on his ice slide with the girls watching. Beast interrupts them and wonders how the other mutants would react to the release from Sentinel Prison, but Iceman is only curious about Scarlet Witch. Jean then notes that the only ones not present there were Magneto and Changeling, and Hank figures the evil mutants will go into hiding for a while. Back with Carl Lycos, he dismisses the nurse, but she protests, and he hypnotizes her into thinking it's late. Glad she's gone, he wonders if a mutant has finally appeared to him when he stops and chastises himself, and he starts remembering something cold and how he was affected by it. He remembers as a child being in Tierra del Fuego, the land of fire, with his father leading an expedition and wanting to reach a cabin before night. He remembers looking up to his father, and when during the hike, the client, Herr Anderson, sees his daughter Tanya went missing. The team break up, searching for her for hours, when young Carl found a hidden tunnel and hears a scream. Hurrying, he finds Tanya being attacked by pterodactyls. Rushing forward, he swings his staff and kills one of the creatures, the rest becoming a blur to him except for their eyes, the sound of their wings, and the noises of him hitting another one of the flying monsters. The pterodactyls leave then, allowing him to return with Tanya, who runs to her father. Rushing him to the cabin, the client, who was a physician, takes care of Lycos, but warns he might not live through the night, and he has nightmares of the cold and creatures for several hours. He awakens the next day to his dog, but when he pets him, he notices the pet is weaker as he gets stronger. As he grew older, he felt the need to drain people's energy when his father dies, and he goes to live with Anderson and Tanya and falls in love with her. However, Anderson refused to let him be with his daughter, and Lycos vowed to do anything to be with her. However, as he went to school, his need to steal energy grew until he decided he needed mutant energy to sustain himself as he begins to drain Alex and feels power flowing into him. Breaking contact, he feels the energy flowing through him as he begins to slowly transform, sprouting wings along with talons and feeling his face grow longer. Feeling power like never before, he develops an alter ego which decides to use it for evil and calls himself Sauron from Tolkien's famous novels and flies away. Back with the X-Men, they hear news about a flying mutant and Warren wants to go after him. Scott, though, wants them to lay low until the humans have cooled off from their witch hunt, but Warren is tired of mutants being accused of everything and quickly leaves the others behind. Coming back quickly, he dons his Avenging Angel costume and leaves the house. The others, though, decide to go after him, even though he's making a rash decision, and elsewhere, Angel finds the flying mutant and moves in to get a better look. Sauron is ecstatic that Angel appears to him and tells him that he'll be defeated if he looks into his eyes. Not believing him, Angel glances at them and begins screaming.